As I mentioned to some of you, I was in Turkey in July for a week, for actually 2 weeks. I went there on assignment, and then I took a week off and stayed in my hometown. And because of the pandemic, there was not much to do. So I wanted to go to the southeast and visit this famous Göbekli Tepe that everyone is talking about. Of course, before going there, I had been watching a lot of videos, talks, presentations, lectures by the excavators, not anyone else. I knew there was serious work going on, and people were making enormous discoveries. Discoveries that will change the way we think of the past, not only the Neolithic period, but in general, how we assess our development, the human civilization in general. And since some of the things, or most of the things these people achieved almost 12,000 years ago are all revolutionary changes, I decided to call this presentation the Neolithic Revolutionaries of Anatolia, even though some researchers don't like the word revolutionary in certain contexts. I will talk about that as well. So the Neolithic hunter-gatherers with a sedentary lifestyle we're facing here. It is usually abbreviated as PPNA and PPNB, two periods. This is 10,000, 8,000 BC PPNA, and the PPNB is the 8,000, 7,000 BC. And then during that time, they have no pottery. And then the following period is still Neolithic, but it is called pottery Neolithic. That is 7,000 and 5,500 BC. And then you have previous periods that are called Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and then you have Neolithic, and then following Chalcolithic and Bronze Age. I don't want to continue with the newer time periods, but these are the time periods that we are dealing with. What we need to keep in mind, first of all, is that the Neolithic is different in different parts of the world. So when we say pre-pottery Neolithic A, 10,000, 8,000 BC, we're talking about the Middle East, South Eastern Anatolia, the Levant. We're not talking about the Indus Valley or China or Africa. This is in different parts of the world. They had their own Neolithic during different time periods. This area was mostly studied by scholars in the 18th, 19th centuries. But one of the most prominent studies were done by Gordon Childe. He was an Australian Marxist archaeologist, and he, based on his studies, not really archaeological studies, but his own studies, he established that riverside settlements and fertile crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates was the perfect geography for a sedentary lifestyle, and the first Neolithic people started to settle in those areas, learned how to work the land, and they were the first villagers settled villagers. And then they, after a certain time period, they took the sea routes to sail to northwestern Anatolia, and then all the way up to Çanakkale, the Dardanelles, and then they proceeded to the west, and they established the settled life in Europe around 3200 BC. Based on the information available during his time, he didn't do so badly, but if he lived now, he would have been embarrassed by what he proposed. Çatalhöyük was a huge discovery, again, early during 1950s and late 1950s and early 1960s. A team of British archaeologists, just by coincidence, discovered this area. David French, Alan Hall, and James Mellard. James Mellard started the excavations in 1961. I have here a website for the Çatalhöyük project. It's an enormous wealth of information. I would definitely recommend that you go and check it out. And then I would also encourage you to go to Wikipedia to read a little bit about James Mellard. He was quite an adventurous person. He very badly discredited himself towards the end of his career in Turkey, and he was banned from the site. But I'm not going to talk about it too much. It's irrelevant. He did something extraordinary by discovering the site and starting excavations. I guess the most important two names that we have to praise for discovering earlier Neolithic in South Eastern Anatolia, somewhat to the north of the proposed fertile crescent, are Robert J. Braidwood and Halep Chambel. Braidwood excavated and did researches in northern Iraq and Syria. He knew a lot about the earlier Neolithic, and then he met Halep Chambel, a Turkish archaeologist, and they did some surveys in southeastern Anatolia together. And he, Braidwood, predicted a primitive village type of settlement was in that area, and that could be very important. And Halep Chambel, knowing the area very well, established that it was prudent to start excavations at Çayönü, pre-pottery B in Neolithic site in this is supposed to be 1964, not 1694. They started excavations in 1964. Just jumping over some time period between 7,500 and 7,400 in thereabouts, PPNA collapses. Especially this is visible at Çayönü. Large buildings, temples disappear, social unrest. There are traces of fires, maybe climate change also, maybe variations in production and self-sufficiency. Something happens and the PPNA collapses at Çayönü. And what comes after is a real revolution, which we will talk about later. Now we need to talk about Harald Hauptmann, a German archaeologist, excavated at Tepe. Again, even somewhat more north the Fertile Crescent, and together with him came Klaus Schmidt. And slowly we're coming down to what we wanted to talk about. And Mehmet Özdan was an assistant of Halit Çambel. So they all worked together in that area. The excavations and discoveries made in that area have historical, philosophical, and theological implications. We have to keep that in mind when we look at the objects. Now, when we talk about revolutionaries, we don't mean revolutionaries in the sense of our day, and not even the French Revolution or Industrial Revolution, but maybe Industrial Revolution, because if it were not that person who wouldn't put up with the simple transistor, and if they didn't try and find a different way and invent an integrated circuit, we wouldn't have the electronic appliances that we used during 1980s and 90s. And if it were not the person who didn't sit as a complacent person and invented the microchip and microprocessor, we wouldn't have the computer technology that we have today. These are all revolutionaries who thought outside the box, and they simply wanted to change something. And this is human nature, and this is what we are going to see in the following presentation. So this is the famous Fertile Crescent. As you see in this map, it is taken stretched to the north. In earlier maps, you would only see this area. You wouldn't see Göbekli Tepe, for instance, within the Fertile Crescent. But here we see Göbekli Tepe, Halanchemi, Nevali Chori, Çatalhöyük, and all the others. As some people claim, Göbekli Tepe, the beginning of time, the oldest site for human civilization, those are all made up assumptions by unqualified commentators. But the idea, the Fertile Crescent is about to die. Yes, the area between the two rivers called Mesopotamia, which is actually which means actually the land between the two rivers, was really important. But now we have examples of human activity that are much more advanced than those that we saw in the lower part of the Fertile Crescent on either east or west. Here we have another map that shows other Neolithic sites. Göbekli Tepe is, of course, the focus of everyone nowadays, but Nevali Chori was really important during 1960s, 70s, and 80s. And Halanchemi during the same time was extremely important. Can Hasan, Aşıklıhöyük, Hacılar, and of course Çatalhöyük yielded enormous artifacts that show the development of human civilization. If you haven't been to Ankara, the capital of Turkey, you have lost a lot, I would say. During my previous presentations, I mentioned the name of the Anatolian Civilizations Museum at Ankara. It's an incredible museum where you would see the historical development of human civilization by the date. In that sense, it is the museum that anyone and everyone who is interested in history should visit. Now we have a second museum that I will talk about later. And here is another map that shows more Neolithic sites excavated in Turkey. One of the most prominent scholars in Neolithic is Mehmet Özdan, Professor Emeritus. He gives talks on a regular basis, and each time he talks, it's like pearls are springing from his mouth. You learn so much as he talks. Of course, he studied with some giants, and of course he excavated in so many different places, and now he is not being shy to share his information. This is one of his talks called Re-Identifying the Neolithic. He says nearly 3,000 Neolithic sites have been excavated in Europe, and there is very little chance of coming across any surprises. However, we know very little about Anatolia, except for the fact that the most important role of Anatolia is in the Neolithic period. So just before the talk, we were just chatting, and we said we've focused mostly Greek and Roman archaeology. And Greek and Roman archaeologists simply blinded us. And this brings up a memory of mine. When I first came to Canada, I noticed that the information or the scholarship about the Greek and Roman archaeology was rather primitive. And I was surprised, and I was talking to our good friend, James Russell, Professor Emeritus of Archaeology from UBC. And he said, it's really surprising that people simply repeat the information of 1960s and 50s about the Greek archaeology or Roman archaeology. They seem to be oblivious of the Hittite culture and the Bronze Age Anatolia, and maybe Assyrian, Mesopotamian Bronze Age is known a little bit better, but people seem to be completely oblivious of the Hittite and earlier time periods in Anatolia. And Jim was really nice and candid in his replies. Well, mostly the Hittite sites in Turkey were excavated by German scholars, and they wrote in German, and we bloody didn't know German, and we couldn't read what they read, what they wrote. That was really curious, and language barrier could hinder people from improving their knowledge about history, and changing things would take so much time until somebody decides to translate some of the scholarship produced by excavators and archaeologists that wrote in a different language. Anyways, when we assess material or information, we have to keep in mind that there can be other information that we haven't had access to read and learn. We have to pay attention to that. So in his presentations, Mehmet Özdan talks about all the different Neolithic sites in Anatolia and the contribution of those cultures, how the stone foundation buildings were developed, and how water insulation was developed, how they created baked clay tiles during the second phase of the Neolithic period, and how they developed stairs during that time. And he also talks about conceptual assertions without archaeological evidence. And he says that Gordon Child proposed natural environment, domestication of sheep, goat, barley, and wheat at riversides, and proposed the mother goddess concept as a religion. This is also from one of his presentations. During the excavations in a site called Domus Tepe, they discovered that an architectural structure thought to be 7,000–8,000 years old had more than one story and a balcony. So this is, I believe this is not just a model, and because the same thing is painted on a jar, and here is a color photo of the same jar. This is really interesting. You have wooden structure, most likely, quite elaborately painted, even with some storks on the roof. So we're talking about 6th, 7th, 6th, or 5th millennium BC. People really have improved their living conditions. Chayonu is, again, one of the most important sites, and they excavated almost all of it in 19 seasons. Almost 4,500 square meter area has been uncovered. The social structure was completely unearthed, and they believe that the TPNA was prominent, but towards the end of TPNB, there was some kind of a social unrest. It was not an invasion. It was not a total destruction. There are not mass graves. So individual graves continue, but something happened, and they destroyed the existing buildings and moved to the side, to the west, and rebuilt. The earlier buildings are round. Later, they start to use grill plans, and then channeled plans, and they used cobbles to pave the floors, and then they created cell type buildings for individuals, and in some areas they had large rooms during the PPNB period. The graves are a great source of information about the social stratification of people. First of all, coming up with the idea of burying the deceased. That was a huge change and development in the human civilization. The value of ancestry, the idea of respecting the dead, and choosing a spot to lay the dead body, and the first traces of mourning of a lost family member or community member or a society member. So that is one of the most important developments in human civilization. And at Chayone, you don't see destruction, you don't see death by impact. If there is death by impact, it's usually between animal and humans, but not because of social unrest and uprising and people killing one another. Mostly natural deaths. By the way, the life expectancy during this time is between 30, 35, and if a person survived until his or her 40s, that person would have been considered old. These are photographs from Çatalhöyük, the second phase or the third phase of the Neolithic period. This is a completely egalitarian society, and it can even be considered the earliest city, because about 8,000 people lived in this town. And the sizes of the chambers or the rooms are very, very similar. No public buildings, all of them are very similar in shape and sizes. And people lived in a complete egalitarian principle as far as the excavations have revealed so far. And no more large structures, whatever you would like to call them. Some people like to call them a temple. Others would like to call them social structures, gathering places. In Çatalhöyük, there are some small areas that people ornamented with bull's horns, for instance, as you see here. And then they painted their walls. Now, what is interesting about all these places is that after a while, maybe after the inhabitants of these rooms died, they buried them. And it's good that they did that. We don't exactly know, or the excavators don't exactly know why people buried these houses, but the fact that they buried them has been extremely helpful for the excavators to find out more about these places. For instance, these wall paintings would have not survived had they been exposed to the conditions of the weather and air and other hazards. So these are all buried sites. The mother goddess concept is so widely accepted and so widely known that until the recent finds, nobody challenged it. This is one of the most famous so-called mother goddess statues at the Anatolian Civilizations Museum in Ankara, found in Çatalhöyük. And recently in 2016, they found another one. I don't know if this was seen in the Western media, but it's a very well-known artifact in Turkey. And this one is again from the Anatolian Museum, Anatolian Civilizations Museum, excavated during 1980s. And here is another one. Now, with the discoveries at Göbekli Tepe and in other areas, people have started to question if they should call these statues a mother goddess representation or not. So Göbekli Tepe, of course, has become one of the well-known archaeological sites in the world. In 2018, it was declared UNESCO World Heritage Site. In 2019, the Turkish government declared 2019 the year of Göbekli Tepe. In 2020, almost 200,000 people visited. In 2021, despite 5 months closure due to pandemic, 567,000 visitors went there. And 2020, during the first 8 months of the year, almost 500,000 people visited. In the last 4 months, in the last 2 months, I'm sure people continue to going there and marveling the structures at Göbekli Tepe. The structures are like the Russian dolls. As you see, 1, 2, 3, 4 enclosures. There can be even more. So this one is the first, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. And as you see, they started large, and then they continue to build in it. When you look at the area that they decided to build these structures, it's a hollow area. It's a lowland. It's not on top of the hill, but it's a hollow part of the hill. They learned how to build walls, but they didn't know how to support the walls. So they had to build in by digging the ground and using the earth to support the walls. And later on, they came up with the stone pillar ideas, but previously they used wooden pillars. And then, depending on the importance and the purpose of the structure, they even developed more techniques to make the buildings more durable. That's why they have multiple walls. This is a photo from one of the earlier excavation times of the Göbekli Tepe. As you see, this part is the top of the hill, and this is rather the lowest part of the hill. And then they discovered that there were settlements in different parts of the hill. As you see, the whole area is actually quite large. And when they started excavations in 1996 by Klaus Schmidt, they found the most important site where they excavated a large public building, and Klaus Schmidt immediately declared that it was a temple, the earliest temple, And then they continued to excavate, and then they found more and more and more chambers similar to the first one that they discovered. And slowly the rhetoric changed, and then they decided to do more analysis and more drills in different parts of the hill to see what was going on. One thing that they didn't pay attention to was the protection at that time. They excavated. Everyone was so excited. They were unearthing never seen before artwork, if you would like to call them, and not to mention the architectural advancement of the people of Göbekli Tepe, or the people of Chayon and all the other earlier sites in the Fertile Crescent and in the Levant. But the artwork, the pillars, T-shaped pillars were all carved various animals images. They were all mostly wild animals, and interestingly, most of them are male, and they made sure that you see that it is a male representation. After a while, they noticed that the impact of the weather conditions were too harsh, and they decided to protect the sites, and they had a competition, a design competition, and they came up with these ideas. As you see, this area has a different covering, and this one is the most famous one. Even though it looks quite interesting, the excavators now don't like it, because it is not prudent enough. They haven't taken into consideration the ongoing excavations, and they keep finding artifacts, and there is no way you can extend this covering. This is a permanent covering. Either you're going to give it up or put a different one, because excavations now continue in this area. And as you see, they have other excavations going on in this area, and there will be more excavations. And the worst thing is that as the limestone T-shaped pillars are exposed to the weather conditions, the drawings, the sculptural elements on them unfortunately deteriorate, and if they don't protect them, they will completely be erased by the weather conditions. These T-shaped pillars, some of them, not all of them, some of them were carved with the images of various animals, a vulture, some other animals, and mostly wild animals. And as you see here, this is when it was first excavated. This is when it is, this is a recent photo. As you see how badly the friezes have been deteriorated. And then there are other pillars on which you have bulls and snakes and foxes. And here's another one with a fox. Maybe it's incomplete. They don't finish the details, maybe. And here is a mountain lion, maybe. And here you have some birds and a boar. There are many other animals, and there is this one. This is a high relief on one of the pillars, most likely a panther, and seen from above. And below is a boar, and the panther is about to pounce on the boar. So, people usually ask, what did these drawings, friezes, meant? Of course, this is a time period when we have no writing, and nobody left any information regarding the purpose of these buildings and the purpose of the carvings on these T-shaped pillars. And it is the guess of anyone. When archaeologists speak in such reservation, the layman think that archaeologists don't know anything. Oh, this means that. Oh, that means that. And due to the nature of publishing archaeological information and the delays in publishing that information created almost an irreversible chaos. Many people, I call them cell phone journalists, visited the site and took photographs and then videos. And then since the official excavation reports had not been published in a timely manner, you saw a lot of garbage online. And of course, the excavators and scholars had to do something about that. And like any disaster, pandemic worked really well in that sense. And the scholars working in these sites gave numerous talks. And for the first time in my studies in archaeology and history, I feel privileged to listen to those scholars in Turkish, in my own mother tongue. In 1965, they found this sculpture somewhere near Adıyaman, again, southeastern Anatolia. Now it is called the Kilisik statue, and it was considered an archaeological oddity. They accepted that it was ancient, but they put it in the storage for decades until a member of the Göbekli Tepe team rediscovered it. It's an obvious pillar shape or human shaped pillar, as you can see, the head, the arms, the loin cloth, most likely an animal skin, something like a robe wearing here, and it's an incredible statue, but the information of 1960s was so poor they didn't think it was important. And interestingly, when you examine the Göbekli Tepe T-shaped pillars, you see the exact same design. The head is not carved, there's no face, but it is obviously a head, and you have the arms, you have a belt, and you have the loincloth here. And this is repeated in so many different places, in so many different ways. Some archaeologists suggest that this person is holding a fox. under his arm or her arm, this is just a representation of a person. And they found this statue. This is a statue that they found in central Şanlıurfa. As a matter of fact, the largest mound in that area is located in the center of the city, Şanlıurfa. And it is considered the first full-size representation of a male figure in stone. And the most important element here is that this person with two hands is holding his, what they would call in archaeological jargon, his phallus, his penis. Everything is very nicely depicted. The person is wearing some kind of a dress with a V collar, double V collar, and deliberately holding his penis in his hand. Now, remember what they discovered in Çatalhöyük, and they had already established the mother goddess concept. This came as a complete surprise. And then they found this, and then they found this. Well, actually, this one was found earlier, and then this one was found. So this one was found by a farmer while plowing his field near Göbekli Tepe in 1986. And the village people, he took it to the village, and village people made fun of the farmer. And he didn't know what to do. He decided to put it on the back of his tractor and took it to the museum. The museum people looked at them and they said, "Oh, this is too grotesque. It cannot be real." And they didn't want to take it first. And then the guy said, "I'm too embarrassed. I cannot take this back to my village. Either you take it or I'll just dump it." So they reluctantly took it from the villager and put it aside until Klaus Schmidt and his team visited the museum and saw it, and they said, "No, this is not a grotesque statue, but this is a Neolithic period art, and most likely from this region." And then, of course, they excavated. They started to excavate at the Cyburch site, and they found this one. So more and more male depictions start to appear. They in 2019 and 20, Professor Necmi Karul, a prominent figure and the leading force of the excavations in South Eastern Anatolia, and his team started the Stone Hills project, and they called it the Geography of the Great Transformation, and that's for a reason. And they established 12 sites, including Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. Harbetsuan, Tepe by means hill. So Göbekli Tepe, Belly Hill, Karahan Tepe, Harbetsuan Tepesi, Gürcü Tepe, Kurt Tepesi, Taşlı Tepe, Sefer Tepe, Ayanlar, Yoğun Burç, Sayburç, Çakmak Tepe, Yeni Mahalle. Yeni Mahalle is the one in downtown Şanlıurfa. But all the others are within 50, 60, 100 kilometers around the center of the city of Şanlıurfa. And they started excavations in 7 sites simultaneously. Professor Carroll is an extremely well-educated and well-experienced archaeologist. Early on, he examined the work of the earlier excavators, and he concluded that it would be inconclusive to focus on one side. By the way, after the unfortunate death of Klaus Schmidt, who started excavations at Göbekli Tepe, for a long time, nobody took over the excavations, and finally, Professor Necmi Karol took it over. And he decided that it would be illogical to focus on one location, and they did some surveys, and they found all these different sites, and they started to excavate on at least 7 of them to see how this human activity pan out in that geography. And did he do a great job? He himself focused on Karahan Tepe, and he made some extremely important revolutionary discoveries. So the Karahan Tepe excavation started in 2019, and so far they excavated 2,500 square meter area. This is an aerial photo of the site. So we are talking about an area of this much. And they have excavated in this area only. And before excavation, this was the landscape. You had T-shaped pillars everywhere, and with a little effort, you could see that the site was going deep into the earth. This is from his presentation. Earlier this month, they had a seminar or a symposium online, which was hosted by the Archaeology News website or YouTube channel. And it is called Archaeology Discussions. More archaeology. So they invited the excavators and scholars of the Taştepeler project, the Stone Hills project, to talk about their findings in 2021 and in 2022. It's a 4.5-hour long program. There are some scholars who spoke in English, so I would definitely recommend that you go on YouTube to the link that I have here to watch at least the parts with English-speaking presenters. You will find their information extremely valuable. So at Karahan Tepe, they located 4 major areas of focus. In this area, they have the quarry, stony part of the site, and in this area, they project to find rather small structures like houses, small dwellings. In this area, they also expect some public buildings. And in this area, they made some incredible discoveries that we will just talk about. They started in 2019. In 20 and 21, they had a chance to work longer than usual. They usually work at these sites 3 to 4 weeks, but during 1920 and 21, they worked 4 or 5 months. So they excavated much more than they could have excavated in maybe 10 years. So the information that they gained in the last 2 years is really remarkable. And interestingly, they discovered a public building, as Mr. Carroll would like to describe it. He doesn't want to restrict the building to a sacred place or a temple, but he wants to see it as a public building where people gathered. What they did is still a question to be answered, but I agree with his attestation. It's not a temple, but it's a public building. Now, what we see here is, again, a building with multi-layer of walls, 1 wall, 2 walls, and the 3rd wall, about 23 meters from the inner wall to inner wall. It's quite a large structure. And you have 2 level seats around it. And mostly it was carved. This is the northern part. Mostly it was carved on the rock bed. And then other parts were supported with stone walls. And they used, again, the same limestone rock slabs to form the seats. There were 2 pillars in the middle, and this building, together with the other public structures, were intentionally buried. How long they survived, how long they served, and when they were buried is not known. However, they have all the evidence to show that they were intentionally buried. So next to this building is a very, very interesting, smaller structure, completely carved into the stone. And you have some other stone pillars in them. Only one of them, the T-shaped pillar here, was brought from outside, but the rest were carved in the structure here. So it is a planned building. And finally, another structure here that the excavators think is a kind of well or a source of water, that they got water. And there is a channel, somewhat a channel here. Most likely the water coming from here was directed into the channel and coming here, filling it out. And there is a gate here, a window-like gate. So whatever is happening here, Professor Carroll thinks that the person or people were simply entering this area because they have some stairs here. And the way the stairs are structured, he believes this is the entrance. And then there are some stairs here for people to come out. So was it a kind of initiation process or ceremony? Was it something else? It is not known. However, this was a major project for the people of ancient Karahan, and it was so significant. It was a communal event. It was something that the people of this whole settlement cared about, and they gathered and they performed some ceremonies, whatever they are, yet to be discovered. These are the photos that I took when I visited the site. And this is the building that I was talking about, completely carved in the rock. It's about 3 meters from here all the way to the bottom. And you have here different shape pillars. Here is one that you would call T-shaped, or maybe a fox-shaped pillar. This one came from outside, but others, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of them were carved in the rock bed. So when they designed this building, they knew what they were going to do. And the most interesting part is this human face. And from the goatee, they presume that it's a male figure. And they also feel that there are some carvings in this area that suggest that this is the head of a serpent. So it can be a serpent, and the head of the serpent protrudes from the rock. So it is actually part of the structure. It's part of the planned structure. And when they buried this area, they didn't want to completely forget it. They put pieces of stone on top of each pillar. So when they excavated, they found these stones, and under each stone, they discovered one pillar. And based on all the male figures and sculptures that they found, they decided to identify these pillars as false. So at the moment, the definition is the chamber with 8 folly. And this is the close-up photo of the male face protruding from the rock wall. It's actually limestone wall, and his mouth is almost open, as though he is speaking, and the eyes are very nicely defined, and a stern face. It's a serious depiction of a male head. And this is a close-up photo of the water or liquid chamber that I just mentioned. As you see, they carved it in a nice way. And then they have drawings on the side walls. It's a snake, as you can see here. I have another photo. The snake continues all the way here. The head is here, and another one is here. And then you have a fox here. This is a photo of the quarry, a T-shaped pillar. They almost finished carving it, and it was almost ready to go, but it was left here alone. And just for you to appreciate the size, I decided to share with you this photo with 3 excavators on top of it. Again, the layers of the building. So there are 17 pillars circling. In the middle, 2 large pillars, 2 levels of seats. This part is excavated in the rock, or others were built. There are leopards, foxes, and vultures drawn on the pillars, on different stones, and they were carved as statues. Many animals, but more than animals. Göbekli Tepe predominantly yielded animal figures, and Karahan Tepe predominantly yielded human statues, as well as animals. What is revolutionary at Karahan Tepe in terms of excavation work is that Mr. Carroll decided to get archaeobotanists and archaeozoologists involved. And from the beginning, these 2 disciplines got also involved. And their contributions will be extremely valuable. They have already started to contribute, but later on, their discoveries will be extremely valuable. This is a reconstruction of this public building at the moment. They can always change this reconstruction in time. What is interesting here is it took a while for them to discover architectural techniques for civil engineering techniques. First round buildings and then rectangular buildings. This is a pattern that you see in many different Neolithic sites across the region. It took a while for them to figure out how to support the corners and build a roof on top of a rectangular or square structure. The round structures were difficult to create chambers within. They were either very small or very large. However, when they discovered the technique to create corners and build square or rectangular buildings, they were able to create chambers, sub-chambers within each room, and this way they discovered the room, multi-room structural idea. And these are early experiments of the rectangular chambers. As you see, there are 1, 2 pillars here. There is a corner here like a kitchen, and or another area here, a utility area, not much known what the purpose was. The same can be seen here. Here you have 4 pillars, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 seats, again carved on the rock bed. Here they used again limestone slabs for flooring, and so this area was purposefully chosen because of the limestone formation. There was enough material for them to build and improve their building skills and techniques. So this is the special 3-meter deep chamber that I was talking about with phallus, 8 phalluses. This is the earlier part of the excavations. This is from the side. As you can see, it was intentionally filled, and in certain parts they used clean earth, and in other times they used all kinds of rocks and boulders to fill it up. And you can imagine how much work, how difficult it must have been for them to fill in these chambers and even the larger one. And this is just to give you a perspective of the size of the pillars. And this building and the buildings attached to it yielded so many human sculptures. It's just unbelievable. Mr. Carroll doesn't want to believe that it was a direct vertical hierarchy society, which means there was a king or an administrator or a ruler that dictated others, but it was a communal society. Vertical and horizontal hierarchy survived at the same time. There was some kind of a ritualistic life rather than a religious life. People, the smaller chambers, housing areas, as they call them, seem to be same size. There are people more privileged than others. How do they know that? From the graves in different parts of the Neolithic excavations. During the pre-Neolithic A period, there are graves that contain with wealth, and they contain wealthy items, and then graves, with nothing significant in them. That shows us that there was some kind of a stratification within the society, but it was not an overlord or more privileged, but not in terms of social structure. Accumulated wealth or position based on their position within the community. And a lot of sculptures. Here is another figure. His phallus is really visible, as you can see. The arm can be seen here, holding his belly, maybe, and in a sitting form. Here is another one with some kind of an animal depiction in the front, and loincloth. Fingers are very nicely depicted, although it's only 4 fingers here. And on the other side, you have 2 foxes. Here is another one. This one they excavated this year. As you can see, this figure is similar to the classic one that I showed you, found in Adıyaman, and what was considered an archaeological oddity. No more. And this one is even more interesting. There is a kind of snake carved on the front side of the figure. This is really interesting. A human figure carrying a leopard on his back. And the leopard is showing his teeth completely. It's not like it is attacking the human, but it's a kind of depiction that shows us that human can live with wildlife, maybe, or human can somehow use the wildlife in his favor. Here is another sitting figure and another animal, hard to describe which one, maybe a lion. And they also found a female figure carving. It's difficult to explain what's going on. Is it birth-giving process or a different process? The excavators have not come up with any explanation. And many human faces, mostly showing the teeth. Interestingly, they were found in the filling, and their noses, almost all of them, lost their noses intentionally. The excavators believed that they were broken intentionally. And they were placed in niches facing the wall. So when they buried the public building, they buried it with all the sculptures. Here is one with two heads, and then they have stoneware, and the stoneware. If you look at the shape, it's very symmetrical. They not only carved it in the most perfect symmetry, but they also ornamented the outside. Now, what we have to think about these artifacts is the development of human civilization. So they solve their dwelling problems. They chose that geography because of the abundant source of material to build. And then we call them hunter-gatherers. That means they were able to hunt enough animals to eat. And they were able to gather some edible food or plants in the geography that they live. What makes these people different from the other Neolithic sites is that they developed a taste for art, and they developed a technique to create art, and they chose to use material from different places. For instance, these carved stone ware, the material does not exist in the location of Karahan. It is imported. So they had connections. There was some kind of a trade from one region to another. So they were not as primitive as we had been thinking that they were. And here are some stone plates. Many of them are broken, and they were laid around the seats in that large public building. And as I mentioned, they started at this site for the first time archaeobotanical studies. And Ceren Kabukçu is the archaeobotanist. I think she's joining out of London. And they are looking to find traces of turpentine, pistachia, wild almonds, lentil, vetch, and other ligaments, and also wild rye, wheat, and other poaceae. And from the beginning, they processed 3,000 plus liters of excavated earth and archaeobotanical material, and 1/4 of the material has been analyzed so far. So for the first time, a multidisciplinary work is conducted at Karahan Tepe. So it is some revolutionary processes have been adopted at this site. The third site that I'm going to talk about is Sayburç. This site is excavated by Dr. Eylem Özdoğan. And this is one of the most challenging sites because there are 3 different locations that they started work, but the most important location is actually in the middle of the modern village. There is this site, as you can remember, Karahan Tepe had a quarry, and the quarry area looked very similar to this one. They have a mound here and another mound in the middle of the village. What they found here startled everyone. You see, this is in the middle of the village, and they found all kinds of tools, mortar, and axes, knives, and these incredible statues or wall carvings. Again, a man, human representation, left hand is over the belly and the right hand holding the phallus. Flanking on 2 sides, 2 leopards. To the left is a naked person, male most likely, and holding most likely again a snake facing a bull. And finally, the work of Fatma Şahin in 2021 and 2022, and they both did some surveys in the area, and they located these sites. Paleolithic period, caves and under rock areas, and PPNA, Neolithic, and then they have trapping and hunting sites. You see how many sites they have determined. It's amazing. And they also started, Fatma Şahin became part of an excavation team at the site called Çakmaktepe. Şanlıurfa is here, Göbekli Tepe is somewhere here, and Karahan Tepe is somewhere here. So even though this area looks mountainous and rocky formation, it is supported by this huge arable land. This is one of the most fertile land that you can find in that area. So these sites, even though they are somewhat far from the farming land, they're not too far from the arable land. So Çakmak Tepe is here, Göbekli Tepe is here, and Karahan Tepe is here. And you see, this is the flat land, the arable land, and all these sites are around the flat land. This is really interesting. And then, of course, you have one of the most important sites, Nevallichori, somewhere here. And this is most likely an older site than Karahan Tepe and Göbekli Tepe. And they think that it's a pre-pillar period structure. Yet you have the holes here, most likely supporting wooden pillars. There is a lot to talk about. Yutaka Miyake, a Japanese archaeologist, is part of the team at Çakmak Tepe, and he speaks fluent Turkish, very, very admirable that he learned the Turkish language and did his presentation in Turkish, very, very remarkable. And this is a reconstruction of one of the smaller buildings that they excavated. And literally thousands of tools, all kinds of cutting, drilling tools. This is another site called Harbetsuan Tepesi. Again, another Japanese team excavates here. Their findings are also remarkable. They think that this is a smaller settlement, not too far from, this is the Haran plain, the lower land, the arable land. And it's not too far from Karahan Tepe, so this is where the Harbetsuan Tepesi is located, and it is visible. Karahan Tepe is visible, and on a beautiful day, they say Göbekli Tepe is also visible. So they are within reach, but that tells us the number of people who settled in that area and how densely populated it was, despite the belief that most of these people lived near riversides or lakesides. And they also found a lot of tools here. Interestingly, they use flint stones for various purposes and obsidian. Most obsidian came from central Anatolia. However, there were different kinds, quality obsidian, and one of the largest obsidian exporting site is Hasan Dağı in central Anatolia, but they didn't like the obsidian from that site, and they mostly imported obsidian from a different site, a smaller site, but the quality was much better. In Harbetsuan, they excavated this statue. It's a 70 centimeter high statue the head missing. Apparently, it's a sitting man with his phallus visible, they say. I really cannot make out the figure here, but this is an important find for the Harbetswan site. That's why I wanted to share it with you. And finally, the Paleolithic period open air settlements Şanlıurfa Prehistoric Survey Project that Fatma Şahin that I just mentioned, Dr. Fatma Şahin runs this project. They established open air settlements, cave settlements, slope settlements, hillside settlements, and trapping sites in this area. And here are some photos from their survey. Some slope side and cave settlements, and most interestingly, the trapping sites. And most likely they were running herds of animals into this trapping area, and then the hunt would begin. They are hunter-gatherers, yet they are sophisticated hunter-gatherers. They're not just going out and trying to kill animals, but they are doing organized work to hunt. The whole focus is now in the Şanlıurfa area. However, it's not the only place where you have the astonishing finds of the Neolithic period come to surface. Göbekli Tepe is worth mentioning. It is not too far, but still out of the Şanlıurfa area. So Şanlıurfa is in this area, and Göbekli Tepe is further to the east. Not too far from Çayönü, and Çatalhöyük and Naşıklıhöyük are here. It will soon be inundated by the waters of the Ilısu Dam, unfortunately. However, the excavations have started in a timely manner, and it continues. And this is the area where they will be digging. And the excavations are run by Professor Vecihi Özkaya, and his team and he have been working very hard, and their discoveries are as astonishing as the Göbekli Tepe region. Even though they have to do a meticulous work to make sure not to miss anything, they find some incredible items. Over 30,000 items, they say, found at this site. But look at the stoneware and the art on them. No two items are similar. Forget about being same. They're not similar. And the burial chambers are enormous source of information. They found stoneware buried with the deceased, and they were broken. Others they found intact. However, the ones that they found in burial chambers were broken, and the broken pieces are missing. They are not in the grave. And later on, they found broken pieces used as amulets. This is really interesting. Then they have these amulets, and they have no interpretation for them. However, they are all different shapes, even though certain figures are similar, like this one and this one. The way they are carved, the shape of the stone is different. So they meant something yet to be discovered. So the development of dwellings and architectural techniques, we have a clear idea as to how they started and how they developed the architecture in that area. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but one thing that I would like to mention is what they call a terrazzo floor. In places where they didn't have the rock bed to use as flooring, they imitated techniques, or they developed techniques to create an insulated, water-resistant flooring system. So they have rock and limestone. So they were burning limestone to create these terrazzo floors everywhere. It is an enormous undertaking, according to the excavators, but people did achieve that. And an unfunny story towards the end of my talk. Some years ago, this was excavated at Göbekli Tepe, and even though there was some kind of a protection at the site, thieves managed to steal this sculpture. I don't know if they have ever recovered it. I couldn't find that information, but it is sad that thieves targeted this incredible site. Finding leopard depictions on these Neolithic sites was interesting, of course. They believed that leopards were extinct in Anatolia, yet in 2021, between 2020 and 2021, they had this the camera, and they located one. So it is really interesting. The leopards continue roaming the steppes of Eastern Anatolia. And there is a Tahberer connection here. Couple of years ago, someone from the Hacettepe University in Ankara contacted my wife and asked her if she could help them to make a bust or head based on a skull that they excavated at Chayona. And they dated it to 9000 BC. Based on the skull, it was inferred that the person had a slim and petite face. And again, using morphometric methods, tissue thickness in different parts of the head was determined. And the shapes and places of soft tissues like the nose, the lips, and the mouth were determined based on the skull measurements, they say. And Selma worked on this project, and she sculpted this head. And to tell you the truth, based on Selma's feedback and my observation, using morphometric methods and also determining the tissue, soft tissue shapes and places by this method, by that method, is has nothing to do with the end product. Every now and then I hear that people built heads and busts based on skulls, and they talk about some scientific jargon to explain what they did, but it is actually the rendition is Selma, nothing else. That's all I can say. And she did a great job no matter what. And this is an interesting short video that I will just keep quiet and let you watch. I'll just start it again. Isn't that wonderful? I have some further reading suggestions here, especially the books of Gordon Chao. I read them many, many years ago in Turkish, and I still appreciate them. Although some of his information is outdated, 90% of his inferences, suggestions, establishments are still valid, and I simply recommend all of them. What happened in history is my favorite, and Man Makes Himself is my second favorite, and Social Evolution is equally important. I read them with great enthusiasm. Prehistoric Man by Braidwood is very good. I admittedly didn't know about this book, but while researching for this presentation, I discovered it is available on www.gutenberg.org. The website is here, so you can download a soft copy and read it online if you like. And I just scanned through it, and it looks very, very interesting. And then some books by Mehmet Özdoğan and Harald Hauptmann, From Village to Cities. It looks like it is bilingual. I haven't seen this book myself, but it has both a Turkish and English title. So I'm hoping that it is a bilingual book. It is available on Amazon. And then other books by Mehmet Özdoğan. They are all extremely valuable sources of information. This guy is almost a national treasure for Turkey and for the world. There are some videos that I recommend that you take a look. These are all available on YouTube. Klaus Schmidt, Göbekli Tepe, the world's oldest temple. Of course, he would have spoken much differently had he lived today. All the same, what he has to say in this video are very valuable. Again, what is Göbekli Tepe in 2014? You can watch both of them and see how he changed his view in time. There is another interview with an English-speaking excavator. He's actually the head of the operations right now, Dr. Lee Clare. He's British, but he was included in the team by Klaus Schmidt. He did his PhD in Germany, and he's this interview is extremely valuable. You can watch it on YouTube again, and it is recent in 2022. There is a documentary for that called Secrets of Göbekli Tepe. Not too bad, but watch it with certain reservation. And then if you would like to know more about Çatalhöyük, Ian Hodder is the person to go to. This is a lecture by him entitled What We Learned from 25 Years of Research at Çatalhöyük. He continues to talk with some other colleagues, Annie Bogart, Claudia Engel, Jessica Pearson, Jesse Wolfhagen. This is from March 2022, Social Organization of Crop and Herd Management at Çatalhöyük. He's a little bit difficult to follow. Sometimes I feel I don't understand the language that he speaks, but most of the time, if you focus, he is an enormous source of information. British Institute at Ankara has a YouTube channel. I would definitely recommend that you go to that channel. Very interesting videos about the British Institute or non-British Institute related archaeological sites. Anadolu'nun Kadim Hikayesi, the immemorial story of Anatolia, mostly in Turkish, some interviews with English-speaking people, what completely English subtitles. It's a must watch movie or documentary. And finally, the link here, the Taştepeler project, the geography of great transformation, the seminar that I just mentioned, that all the prominent excavators in the Stone Hills project speak here. Finally, again, while going through and researching on the internet, I stumbled upon this talk by Ron Margolis. He's a British communist, I believe, or Marxist, and he spent quite a bit of time at Çatalhöyük. I think he's part of the team, and he talked. The title of his talk is Çayören and Çatalhöyük, Revolution and Egalitarianism in Neolithic Turkey. It's a very, very interesting talk, and then discussions follow. And here is another site. These are the German communist organization, I believe. They also have their research on the earlier social structure and development of human relations from China to Çatalhöyük. Very, very interesting talks. Don't get me wrong, I'm not recommending any of these books I say here. Look at this. People who have nothing to do with Göbekli Tepe and all the other Neolithic sites wrote so many different books. It's just unbelievable. I thought we had a lot of imposters in Turkey, but many English-speaking writing imposters out there. I'm sure you will come across these along the way. I would say be careful. And then again, if you go on YouTube, you have these people, Karahan Tepe, they discovered Karahan Tepe. Most likely they went to Turkey on tour and they were taken to these sites. I don't think they discovered these sites on their own. Look at this Karahan Tepe super civilization. Biggest archaeological discovery of 21st century, megalithomania. And then they, have other videos. And finally, those who have Netflix might know about this. There is this series called Ancient Apocalypse. The fifth chapter is about Göbekli Tepe. Again, I don't know what these people try to achieve by trying to make connections with stars and winter solstices, summer solstices, how the angle of the light hits the head of the sculpture. What are they trying to achieve? I don't understand. But I have an idea, of course. We humans don't like change. Those who are not complacent and try to change what is available are called revolutionaries. Of course, archaeologists, with their suggestions, the way they interpret what they discovered, they speak with certain reservation instead of making uninformed assumptions and claims. They simply say, oh, we still need to research, we still excavate further. But then you have smart people out there. As soon as they hear the professor says, he doesn't know what it means, they say, ha, stupid, it is such and such. So people do a lot of interesting things online. Of course, we all love and want to be recognized, and I can understand that. But unfortunately, the internet is full of garbage. At the beginning of my talk, I said the Anatolian Civilizations Museum in Ankara is a must-see place. The second must-see place is here, the Şanlıurfa Archaeological Museum, predominantly Neolithic. All the finds from Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe and all the other stone hill project excavations are housed and displayed here. Earlier, late last year, early this year, they opened a new section for Karahan Tepe. Incredible place to visit. And this is just a small part of what I saw. This is a reconstruction of the large chamber at Göbekli Tepe. Yes. Yeah, and this is a site in Şanlıurfa, but I'm going to stop talking here.